Good afternoon and welcome to the CartoVista 6.0 launch webinar. We are quite delighted to be here with you this afternoon to share our experience and the CartoVista 6.0 story. I actually have somebody else on the line with me. Actually, before I do that, let me just introduce myself. I am Danny Bouchard, President and founder of CartoVista. Really excited again to be here. And I have with me actually our VP of Business Operations, Cécile, joining us from France. Good afternoon, Cécile.
Good afternoon, Danny, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today for this interesting webinar.
All right, so Cécile, why don't we go through some of the webinar logistics with our participant, make sure everyone's on board as to how things are going to go.
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, but you probably know that you will not be able to speak during the webinar, but you have a chat functionality, so don't hesitate if you want to get connected with us. We'll make sure we answer to you straight away. If you're bothered with the video, there's an option to remove it, and you will just hear us talking, and you'll see the presentation full screen. There's a fit to window option as well in case your presentation does not fit properly on your screen. So that's for the practical information. So how we will go on our side. So we will be interested to get some feedback from you. So Danny will share some questions through the polls, and you will have time to get back to us at the beginning, at the end as well of the webinar, and we'll share the results with the ones that will remain until the end. Danny will do his presentation during about 45 minutes. Then we'll be very happy to share some questions and answers. Again, you have another function that allows you to send questions during the presentation. We will keep the questions until the end, and we'll take care of answering to the questions live at the end of the presentation. So that will be about 10 minutes after the presentation. So here I think I've talked enough. It's time for Danny to show us CartoVista 6.
All right, before we do that, we thought we'd get the ball rolling by a quick poll just to ask you a little bit where you're coming from and get some information and to get you, to interact with us a little bit. So I'll launch the first polling. There's 3 quick questions. You should see that on your menu where you can vote. There's a few questions. You'll see 1, 2, and 3. The first question has to do with which GIS system do you currently use. Whether you don't use a GIS, you may use Esri ArcGIS, MapInfo, QGIS. You could use the tools to actually vote online. So if you take a look in the polls, I see some people are already doing it. I see some answers already on my side. The second question is, how long have you been using CartoVista? Never used it, or you're considering evaluating it, or you've used it recently. That may be the case, or you've been using it for more than a year. We also have another question regarding the aspects of CartoVista that seems the most relevant to you. It may be speed, it may be the interactivity aspect of it, it may be the presentation in the form of a dashboard, it may be the high quality cartography that we have, and a lot of options for the cartographer. It may be thematic mapping. So you can choose up to 3 items. And then once pretty much most of the people have taken the time to respond, I will end the polling and share the results with pretty much the audience, and we could see who is with us today. And it's also a way for us to get to know a little bit more about some of the things you're doing on your side and some of the things that may be of interest to you. So right now I see that just about 85% of the people have already voted. We're almost 90 now, 88%. So very active community. Thanks for participating. This is great. So I'm just going to give it more 10 seconds more, and then I'll end the polling. And actually, we will be able to share the results with pretty much everybody. So let me end the polling right now. All right, I will share the results. So the first question was, which GIS system do you use? We could see that a lot of you right now are using MapInfo, 73%. We've got a few people using Esri ArcGIS, and still, quite a few people that don't use GIS necessarily, but predominantly, most of the people online are using GIS right now. How long have you been using CartoVista? We have people that, are considering it, people that have used it recently, and people that have been using it for more than a year. If we look at, the aspects that seems the most relevant to you, we've got speed. Interactivity is the big time winner, obviously with 93%, and dashboard presentation is fairly high as well. I think the fact that we can take that and make that happen in the browser is big. So anyway, thanks for deciding to share those results with us. This is great. This is helping out quite a bit in our ability to take a look. So again, before getting into the presentation, I'd like to say a few things. Personally, thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you on board. That includes folks that are interested in CartoVista, learning about it, existing customers and partner. This is really great to see you. We have participants from all over the Americas, and I would like to try to take a minute to welcome them in their own language. Primero, buenas tardes y bienvenidos a los hispanohablantes de Latinoamérica. Em segundo lugar, boa tarde, bem-vindo a pessoas do Brasil também. Isso é ótimo. And of course, we have several participants from the US and Canada. Obviously, you are more than welcome, and the rest of the presentation will be all English, so make it easy on me. All right, so I'm sharing my screen right now. You should be able to see it. So essentially, in a nutshell, in the life of a software company, a launch of a new version like version 6 is really, really a big event. We've redesigned this from the ground up. We've completely changed the security management, the infrastructure of the whole solution. And those are things that are in the background that you don't necessarily see. But there's been a huge effort. It took us almost 18 months of work to come up with this new release. We have now support for SQL Server and PostgreSQL, which is great for cloud deployment or web deployments. We have really enhanced the performance and the ability to work with larger, bigger data sets, and we're really proud of that. We've also tried to enhance the data efficiency, your ability to send files and receive data and all those things, and manipulate your data. Now, in terms of the new capabilities, you'll see that we have a new user experience with new capabilities, user roles, defining roles and data, public access to maps, how maps can be accessed by the customers and who gets to see what is a big part of this release. And really, we always had in mind, how can we improve the productivity for the team to collaborate and share their data? You'll see a lot of features that are geared towards that. And finally, having the capability to deploy more than one tenant or more than one client on the same server was a big undertaking. So I'm going to start right away by taking a look at some of the new things. Obviously, we have redesigned completely the user experience. So let's start with looking at the new interface and UX. So first of all, when we look at the CartoVista interface, it is completely new with a brand new presentation framework. So let me start this. This is a new interface. As you can see, we have the left side menu, which essentially shows you pretty much all of the different data that the different menus that you can pick. So we have data, we have different tiles that you can click on. Those are different tile layers available. We have the users of the system. We have the statistics. You can see as well, whenever we click on the menu, it's very fast for it to load for the end user. The most interesting one is the map gallery. The map gallery is designed in such a way that we show large thumbnails of all the different maps. They're all displayed. They're either displayed as a thumbnail, but they can also be displayed as a list. There are action menus at the top. You can actually download a list of all those maps, and you get an Excel spreadsheet that has all the data. But if we switch back to the gallery view, you can also change the order, descending or not, the most recent one being, at the first item in here selected. You can click on a particular map, and this is where we have the right panel. The right panel is extremely useful to showcase the information about the element that was clicked on, in this case, the map. Now you can go in, you can start figuring out or attaching keywords to each of the maps. In this case, I'm just going to add the cars keyword. So now cars will be associated with that particular map that I just added. So anytime I want to do a search for a specific map at the top, if I type in cars, only the related map will show up. Same thing if I type in demographic, for instance, all the maps that relate to demography will be displayed for the end users. Something else that was important as part of this release was also to be able to go further and define a specific title or change some of the map title. Now, a lot of our customers may be working with very, very long map titles. We've seen that. So this is something that we've changed. You can see now the UI allows you to type in the title that you want, and you can just update it, and it updates on the fly. We really taken a lot of time thinking about how can we make that really easy. Editing the title, you just roll over it and you change it right away. That makes the user experience much better, and the workflow much better. So those are all little things that at the end of the day can improve the usage of your product. Something else that was important, obviously, is the ability to load the map. Previously, we had really different ways and different dialogues that were popping up. Now, the way to load a map, as you've seen, is you simply click on the image and it loads. Something else that was important for us was to simplify the presentation. You notice the top bar is one single top bar. We've amalgamated the top bar of the server component, so it's all one coherent top bar. You can still use the thematic display menu to choose your analysis of interest, and that's still very much available in that new UI. But the top bar at the top really simplifies everything. It's all black, it's all consistent. You can also decide to define your own thematic analysis, and this is what we're doing right now in this example. We changed this a little bit to make it more wizard-driven and step-driven, so you can create your own thematic analysis, pick your layer of interest, and then you pick your variable. And the last step is to pick essentially how you want this to be represented on the map. When you do that, then everything gets displayed in the viewer, and you can easily do the next step. Here's an example where we go into the print layout, and we actually show the print layout. And you can still zoom in, do what you want with your print layout. When you're happy, you just close, and you're pretty much done. So that really changes the workflow, and that new toolbar was a big thing for us, and it really simplifies the user experience. When you want to go back to the gallery, you can hit the close map, goes back to the map gallery, and then you can pick a different map. Something else that was important for us is you can see the speed at which some of the maps are loading. This is an example of Dallas traffic count in the US, where we have implemented traffic counts. You could see by graduated symbols. This is a map that was designed with darker colors and brighter colors. This has been quite popular with quite a few of our customers, coming up with a theme that really focuses on the data and not so much on the map itself. Now, each of those layers are fully interactive. You can interact with them as we're doing right now. Another thing that has been quite popular with a lot of our customers in the transportation space is to work with lines. And this is interesting. Try to play with not only layers of points or polygons, but also lines, showing in this case road traffic, being able to filter specific highways and look at volume using the stroke width, for instance, has been quite useful for many of our customers to show things differently. There's a lot of data that relates to line that can be brought up to life. And then you can just log out. Obviously, the security aspect of CartoVista was also a big consideration when we designed the solution. All right, so let's keep going. Another aspect of the presentation is mobile support. Many of you know that mobile is really key when it comes to delivering a rich user experience. So we've taken that into consideration. So if you are running CartoVista 6 on an iPhone, the interface will adapt beautifully if you make it landscape. You know, everything was designed with a responsive design in mind. You could see that we can still access the menu. If we switch to even a responsive interface, everything will adapt to the device size and its capabilities. That was really important because, you know, a lot of people are using their phone now, even in meetings, to discuss, you know, business issues. Same goes when you're opening up a map. The map is designed to take, you know, the entire screen, and you could still go back to the gallery and access all the properties, even though you are running on your iPhone or, you know, potentially your smartphone or your tablet. All right, moving on. Whoops. Whoops. There we go. All right, user management, something else that was important. We wanted our users to have the capability to control who gets to do what in the product. So first of all, you need to log in to the server to be able to control who gets to see what. When you do, then you've got the capability to you know, log in with admin rights. The user admin can then add a user. In this case, we'll just put a famous explorer that I really like, Jacques Cousteau. I love Jacques Cousteau, and, you know, listening to his TVs. So we put him in the video. So I can type in his email. Obviously, he's working at CartoVista now, which is great. You can figure out a password for him. You can also, you know, put him or attach him to a group. It may be different groups. We may want to put, let's say, international or Canada as a group where he belongs. That's also a very nice way to make sure that you can define roles that can be applied to the group. You could see that we've added him as an administrator. So in this case, he can go in and you could take a look at a lot of the options that we've put in, which really facilitate the onboarding. You know, you want to set up a reset password, all those things that you expect, sort of like in a system, have been put into place. You know exactly if, you know, they have a failed login or issues with their account. All of that is available and right there for you to work from. When you create a new user, you can actually assign permissions to that user. So right now I'm going into the Panama map. I can type in Jacques Cousteau's name and add him and give him access to that particular map. Same goes to pretty much all the permissions, pretty much all over the place. You just need to click on the item and define the permissions and give people access to the resources that you think are appropriate. All right, next step, something else that we've enhanced dramatically is the server layers. You know, I know a lot of you folks have been working with server data and very complex data. So let's take a look first at an example. This is Washington, D.C. This is a bunch of incident location. There's about, if I recall correctly, 200,000 records in this map. As a server layer, obviously, in this case, we do the aggregation or the clustering to you know, really simplify the presentation. As it is with normal layers, you can also theme those server layers. So for instance, if we want to do a heat map analysis on the server layer, we can do that. We can go and customize the style quite easily. So I can make this 100 meters instead of being by default by screen. This will change the analysis. Whenever I pan the map, there's a call back to the server. You can imagine it's retrieving a lot of data, but will render the data in the browser quite nicely. So a lot of flexibility. I can remove that thematic analysis and do it all. You're not limited to work with point layers. You can work with lines. As you can see, we have a line network in here. Same approach. I can choose that server layer and start picking up, let's say, the traffic counts for a specific time of the week. Let's say on Friday, I want to take a look at the traffic, let's say by graduated size. So you can really design those analysis, and I could go in and customize this to make it more obvious. So if we change the size of the maximum, you could see that we have something going on right there in the north. There's a lot of traffic on the Friday apparently. I'm not from Washington, so I don't know. But let's say we want to do a comparison right now between 2 different days of the week. Let's say we want to compare Friday and Thursday. When you pick those 2 variables, we're actually proposing a pie chart representation automatically, and then you can add this. And then we can see from the map that there's a huge difference for some of those areas and some of the traffic on a number of accidents that actually are occurring on Friday and Thursday. Now, let's move on to a little bit more comprehensive demo in the insurance space. This is an interesting demo that has just about 1 million policies. This is a Canada demo. So I can zoom in pretty much anywhere. I'm gonna, in this case, zoom in to Victoria, BC. You could see that we have a series of claims that are actually displayed as symbols on the map, as clusters. If I zoom in close enough, those clusters will start to show up as points, individual points. Those points are interactive. I can zoom and obviously mouse over them, and I retrieve the data tip of the attached record. So this is something that we've worked really hard on with CartoVista, is try to send appropriate data to the client and make it as intelligent as possible, but also giving you the ability to search for a specific claim. So I think there's over 1 million claim in that data set. So I can type in a claim, and I'll go with my famous search again, Jacques Cousteau, try to find a place. There's actually a claim with a street called Rue Jacques Cousteau. You're not limited to point layers. Obviously, I have a road network of 4 million records in that sample, and I can do the search on the road network as well. I can type in a specific name of a street, and I can just search for it, and we will actually zoom to that location. Although that layer right now is not displayed, but I'm going to turn it on in a second to show you. So a lot of flexibility has been put together. All of those clusters are actually, you can create thematic analysis on those clusters. As you can see right now, we show the claim status, whether it's closed or open, closed being displayed in green, and open is in red. Those layers could be selectable, so I can select from the claims, and we could see that the thematic analysis and the chart on the right is getting updated. I'm going to turn on the road statistics to show you a little bit more data. Now, this is a line layer that has pretty much all of the roads in Vancouver. So you could see that the server call has been made and the data has been retrieved, and it's actually reacting the same way that it would do if I would display all the points. Whenever I pan, there's a call made to the server to retrieve the data. Here's another example where we include more information. This is block groups data. There's actually over 400,000 polygons in that data set covering all of Canada. You could see as I'm panning around, it's actually feeding the data from the server and filling in the map with the data. You could see as well as I'm zooming in, I'm actually getting more detailed geometries, and that was important for us to provide as much as possible representation that is close to the real data. Now, something else that we have put together that is extremely useful, and maybe one of the most important features in this release, is the ability to save your session. I think a lot of users will love this. So I can create a new session, give it a name, let's say called South Victoria Risk. I can define who gets to see that session, and now that session is saved. That session will be available. I can go in, go back, and actually you're not limited to a single session. You can create multiple ones. So I can switch to a different theme, and I can decide to create a brand new session and give it a name as well. So let's say I do that. Just going to go with defining a new one. We'll give it another name in this case, create a new session, and call this one South Victoria, and average values, for instance. So I can make that restricted or not, and then I can use the top menu to navigate between those sessions. I can go back, or whenever I load the map will give me a choice of the 2 sessions I just saved, and then I can easily pick the one I want, and it's going to open up. Now, this not only saves your theme, it also saves your view. It saves the thematic analysis that you have, all the settings that you have set up. It's extremely useful to share information within your colleagues, or say, hey, I've put together this great analysis, go take a look, give me your comments, give me your feedback, which is really what we had in mind when we designed this. So here's an example of a more geomarketing related example where we save some sessions. Let's say the first one is Rockcliffe Park. We have targeted an area. You could see that we have some annotations created. So the target area was saved as part of the session. So a very useful way to actually highlight something on the map and save it for your end users. But also what we have is we are supporting the ability to save the selection and the selected features. So this is an example where we highlighted a series of customers on the map, and that selection is actually being saved in your session and retrieved whenever that session is restored. Another really useful way to share your sessions. The last example I wanted to show was the support for annotations. So if you add annotation as part of your session, they are also saved in the session, so that whenever the people are retrieving it, they're going to see the comments that you've added on that particular map. So you see, we've done tremendous enhancement to really help the user experience and your ability to collaborate online with other users. So all of that is available for server layers, and we're really excited about that feature in particular. Now, let's see, for those of you who are working with GIS, and there seems to be a lot of you, which is great, you all start with working with shapefiles and data. So let's take a look at the workflow when it comes to work with shapefiles. So this is where all the data tables and layers in the CartoVista server are displayed. You could take a look at a particular layer, where it's used, which maps, but you can also add data. When you click on add data, you can just drop your files, and essentially in this case, a zip of your Esri shapefile, for instance. This is what I'm doing right now with those clients. Those clients have been uploaded to the server, and you just simply go through the process of picking all the different columns that you want to be included in the upload. You can pick and choose the one you want. You can remove the ones you don't want. You just hit next. You could see that those records are actually being processed. We have a nice notification section at the top of the dialog, which shows you which data was inserted or not. And all of the process is clear. You can clear those notifications and go from there. Some of the process can take a long time. You can imagine if I'm uploading 1 million records, obviously I want to see the process, but I don't want to be bothered with it. So you can leave those notifications going, and it doesn't matter. After I've uploaded that data, obviously that data is not used, but I can go into the data and actually I can browse it. I can see it. I can also pick a column. I can change some of the column type, but I can also rename it. Let's say we change this one to uppercase name. You could see it gets changed in the data table. And the way you work with the server layer is whenever you're working with the CartoVista Publisher, that layer can be displayed. So now that we're back into the publisher, let me show you some of the new things that we've put into the product, and that will really simplify the usage of it as well. We have a new start page that you see right now, which shows you all your recent maps that you've worked on, as well as some samples that are coming with the product. We made that a lot easier, a lot more visible, and I think this is going to improve the user experience. There's also tutorials and video on how to use the product, which can be quite useful. But for now, I'm just going to pick one of my favorite maps, Vancouver Parks. So this is a map that we've put together just for fun. We were looking for a place, so Vancouver was a cool place. We decided to build a map. So this is a map that contains a server layer, Vancouver Parks, which is stored on the server, essentially. So what I'm going to do is the client data that I just updated, I'm just going to add it to the server. If I just update the server, that new client layer will be available, and then I can just drag it on top of my map. Now I should have a new layer. Obviously, black on black, which is the default color, is really hard to see. So we'll change the style. I'll make those points, let's say, in this case, blue. and I'll put a halo so we can see the border of the points. When I do that, we should start to see them appearing. And you see that in a second by hitting the data that this is actually data that I just set up from the server. So you can see that uppercase name field I can add to my map. I can define, let's say, a data tip so that whenever I mouse over those points, we want to show the name of the client. Notice that we have another layer called image URL. This is for another feature that I'd like to show you. This is a layer of points that is actually shown in red on the map. These layers of points include the ability to specify what we call image URL, and you'll see in a minute how that can be rendered. So, it's an interesting new feature that we've put in. Once you're ready, you can just say publish. You go to your public option, you can give it a name. For now, I'm just going to overwrite the existing map that I have. This map has already been created, so it's publishing it again. It's overwriting it. And now I can just update it. Once the map is updated, you can see it's automatically selected. I can click on it, and this is going to load in the viewer. Now, this is the map that I just created. It has my parks. I can zoom in. You could see it has the layer of clients that I just put in. So a very simple workflow for publishing and creating your map or adding it to the gallery is as simple as just drag and drop. You bring it in and away it goes. So this is the new functionality, image URL, which is very useful if you have multimedia data, if you have images about your points, about your projects, you can actually show them that way. So this is a layer of points. We have some red points on the map, as you can see. Whenever I roll over, you can see that we actually show the picture. There is a series of URLs attached to each of those points, and those points can be displayed. Whenever I click using the info tool on one of those points, we show the image in sort of like a carousel view in the info tool. We recognize that it's an image URL type. We show you and we give you the ability to go back and forth between the images. And whenever you click on the image, it opens up in full view, which is very useful. I know a lot of GIS people are using all sorts of images, and it's popular for you to work with multimedia data. And I think we've made that easier with this release. All right. New data table. This is something else that we spent quite a bit of time on, is how can we improve the ability for you to put in new tables. So a lot of you are working still with Excel data. So we'll just take a look at what's the workflow of sending or working with Excel data and how that Excel data can link with the server information. So I have a classic Excel spreadsheet with about 500 records. You see I have a lat long field in this case. We're actually going to use this to geo-reference that data. So I'm going to first send the data to the server. So I can just take the Excel spreadsheet directly, drag it, and then I can pick and choose the fields that I want, like I did the last time. I could just rename that to something else. We'll just rename it to client locations. You could see that the data was added. Now I can click on that data table and I can start looking at the data like I was doing before. The new menu that is available from the data is the georeference menu. Now, since we have a lat long field, we can actually georeference that table. So I can just georeference it. You could see with the notification that it was successful. Whenever I do that, that data table changes to a layer, and then it's a layer that I can start using in the publisher because it has lat long, it is properly geocoded, and I can decide if I want to make it public or not. In this case, if it is public, I can just update my CartoVista server, and here's my client location. That layer I can just add to my map, and here the beautiful black points that we can't see. So we'll just change the color again to something more bright. Red seems to be appropriate, and now you get to see the points. So what I've been doing is I've been starting from Excel, sending the data to the server, georeferencing it, and then bringing in to the publisher to include on my map. And obviously, I can decide to publish that data, give it a name, and that's going to publish a new map for me on the portal. That new map will be added automatically. I am asked to specify the access permissions, so make both the international user group access to this data, and then I can just click on it to load it. You can see now this data has been loaded, and I didn't put any interactivity setting, but you get to see how fast you can put together a data and a new data layer. Now, something else that you may want to do is, let's say you have those client locations are updated every month. Every quarter, you have a new file. Once your map has been put together, you can go in and just update the data. You don't need to republish the map. And I think that's extremely powerful for those of you who are working with data that changes all the time. So I can change the client locations. And when I do, you could see that we have, before the update, we had 465 records, and now we'll be at 1,000 records. I can just hit next. This is going to do the update. Obviously, in this case, the structure of the data is exactly the same, but it's a very nice way for you to keep one data set up to date without necessarily having to republish. If I go back into my file again, you could see that we have a lot more points in that area. So that layer has been updated without doing any republication. Something else that we're really excited about is the ability for you to link data. You could see I have right now my client locations layer. Let's say I want to attach more attribute information to that layer. You could do that using the link data. But before I can do that, I need to add more data. Obviously, there has to be an additional table. So I have some client data in Excel that I can add. I can give it a name, and I can pick what I want. And you can see that table being added in the portal. Now, let's say I want to add and link that layer, or that data table, to that layer. I can just click on link data. And this is where you actually define the ID of your link column and the destination column, which is in this case the same one, ID. This also tells you how many records are matching. And that client locations now has both tables, not only one, but two different layers. When you open the view, it actually showing you the two data sets and the two tables linked. Extremely useful way for you to look at the data and look at the different columns. Now in the publisher, obviously since the structure has changed, I have to update my layer, but that layer is then available to update the map or use on a different map. Let's say in this case, if I remove this one and add the new one, the new layer will include pretty much all the fields that I have. So you could see that I can pick from one table or another all the different expenses in this case, and I can start defining a data type that show the data that is coming from the attached spreadsheet. So we're really excited about this because it's opening up not only the possibility to do a single thing, but to actually link multiple documents together. I know a lot of users are using, or having separate data. Something else that is very useful is those Excel spreadsheets have column names, and those column names, can be 100, 200, 300 characters. And when you bring them in, they have the proper terminology. So you can save a lot of time using this functionality. So I'm just updating my map right now. I'm testing it to make sure it loads properly. You could see that whenever I mouse over, it has the attached data. And really, this is something that we're really excited about and something that I think will be quite useful, potentially to some of you. All right, moving on. Next one, we've also done some significant map enhancement that I'd like to demonstrate. That goes in line with the ability for you to actually control who gets to see what. So let's see. First of all, what you can do when you publish a map, you can customize the thumbnail. The thumbnail is the image that you see, the preview that you see. If you have a different thumbnail that you'd like to use, you can just update it very easily. You can make that your own or go with something different. We have also a new concept of making a map public. Now, this is very useful if you want to share your map with a different audience or even with the public or your intranet. Very useful way to share a particular map. When you share it, you can see the map has a URL. I can click on or copy that URL, And if you are working outside of the portal in a brand new web browser, since I made this map public, this map will be available. And you can see now I didn't sign in, and I get to see the two different layers. I have my clients, the Vancouver parks, and the tile being available, because pretty much all of those resources are public, and I made the map public, so it is available. What's interesting is you can start playing with the permissions. So let's say if I was to modify some of those layers, some of those data layers, such as the clients, if I go in and change the parks and make it non-public, now all of a sudden the parks are restricted access. So whenever I reload this map, the parks will automatically be removed from the map. As you can see now, I have only the clients, not the park. I think it did the opposite. So it's really a nice way for you to actually start defining some content that maybe you don't want to expose to certain users. And the server will take care of removing what's not appropriate for a user. We're really proud of that too. That I think will be quite useful for many customers. Now, new tools. We had to come up with new tools to help you be more efficient. So this is something as well that we're really keen, is the new Isochrone and Isoline tools in the publisher and the viewer. So let's take a look. We've done this by doing a partnership with HereMaps. So there's a new tool that you can just add to your map. You Isochrone, isodistance. You need to have a license from HereMaps. We will be selling licenses of HereMaps as well that you can incorporate into your publisher. So stay tuned for that with the details. That includes as well the ability to search for address, and you could also specify the app ID and the app code. When you do that, if you're searching for an address, for instance, this uses the HereMaps services. So in this case, I have 1827 Nelson Street in BC. This is going to navigate to that location. And the HereMaps services are really good. This seems to be more accurate in several countries as well. So for international work, I think it's a good addition to our platform. Something else that is, I'm going to turn off the customers. Something else, another tool that we find is extremely valuable, is the ability for you to create some isochrones. We have a new isochrone tool that you can just use, a drive time analysis tool. Whenever you click on the map, there's a dialog that shows up which asks you to specify either time or distance. If we start with time, I'm just going to go by specifying, in this case, 10 minutes. If I go with 10 minutes, you could see the isochrone was just added based on the centroid that I just decided to click on. You can also go with what we call an ISO distance. So instead of a specific time, you can go with a specific distance, drive time distance, close to a point. You could see that the service as well is extremely fast in responding. We've done a lot of enhancement to make the end user experience as fast as possible. There is a lot of other options that you can play with. You can consider the traffic, the departure time. So let's say if we go back to time-based, obviously that only applies to the time-based. But if I put in 10 minutes, I can or not consider the traffic, or I can say I'd like that to be the traffic at 5 or 4:30 in this case. Obviously, this produces very different results. The Here API includes all sorts of options, and we thought it would be very useful to expose those. Now, you're not limited to a single item. I can click on the second location, and there's an option for clearing the previous results that you can turn off. And then I can pick a different style to create that second isochrone. You could see that some of those are actually overlapping. With the ability that we have in CartoVista to apply the blend modes and all those things, I think we have a very unique way to show those complex areas which always overlap. You're not limited to a single isochrone. You can start specifying more than one, or in this case, more than one distances. So the way to do that is you separate all the values by commas. As you can see now, we have several values and several isochrones being displayed. And the mode in this case is obviously by car. very convenient way for you to analyze and do the data. We have those as separate layers. You could see in the layer control, I have the isochrones and the isochrone centroids as a separate layer that I can just decide to turn on or off. Now, those isochrones are essentially a bunch of layers. They're a layer that were created like other layers, so you can start interacting with those layers. If I turn on the clients that I had before, turn them on again, now I can do an isochrone, let's say from that store location, and I can specify a drive, let's say a walk time of a few minutes, let's say 5, 10, 20, and 30 minutes. I can choose the transport mode walk. And now I get to see the different isochrones that were created, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And now I can start selecting the clients that are within those areas. So I can click, give me a list of all the customers that are in a 20-minute drive time. I can get that list. I can click. Now those are the 10 minutes. Very useful way for you to actually query and put those isochrones in a relationship with the data that you have. And we find that this is, I think, quite valuable. One of the things that we've thought about is make sure that this also is supported in your session. So whenever you're creating a session, you can actually save those isochrones and those annotations and the selection. So the Vancouver points of sale, 20-minute clients, if I go back in on this particular map, this will allow me to pick that session, and we'll see that the isochrones will remain visible and are actually saved as part of the session. So this really opens up the door for you to start building some analysis, from your network of operations, different point of sales. You're not limited to a single point. You can create them and you can save them as part of your session. So I think that's going to be quite useful for the business users. Anyone involved in geomarketing, those are really useful tools. All right, finally, something else that we have really spent quite a bit of time on is, defining new tools to help you deploy multiple clients. So we have actually the concept of what we call the super admin, which, once you log in, you can actually define multiple spaces. The idea of that is to have a separate private space for each customer, and each private space can be deployed securely. So for instance, I can pick on the demos tenant. You could see that the demo tenant has a different color scheme. It's all in blue right now with a different style. I can pick our very famous now Vista Insurance, which is not a real company name by any chance. Don't try to get insured by them. It's not going to work. You can see it's all pretty much in green colors. We can design. You can also set the logo. A lot of options to create and adapt to the customer brand. If I go back to the customer demo, I can only the super admin can go in, but once you are in this menu, you can actually control the look and feel of every tenant. Not only every look and feel, but you can also upload logo. You can configure these things and configure the setup of that particular tenant. In terms of styles, there's a lot of control over the styles and the UI and appearance. We've set up some very nice themes, so you can derive, let's say from the gray theme, I can change that blue color to, let's say, a red color, and all of a sudden I have a very distinct look and feel. I can save this, and you can see now I have an interface that looks different and that my customer will feel at home when they start using the product, which is what we're after. We're trying to make this appropriate for the customer. You can also specify a disclaimer, such as, in this case, welcome to CartoVista, and a bunch of things like that. Disclaimer text that could be displayed, or some introduction, so that as users are logging in, they get to see what you want them to see. So in a nutshell, a lot more control over what you can do, but again, this is only available to super administrator. They're the only ones that can actually control the tenant space. But this will boost our ability to adapt to the customers, and again, something that we're really proud of. I think that pretty much covers the part that I wanted to share with you this afternoon in terms of the presentation. We will continue with Cecile. Cecile will join me again for the Q&A section. I'm sure you guys have probably a lot of questions for us. So Cecile, if you're back online with me.
Yes, I'm here for sure.
Beautiful. I need a bit of water now.
Yes, I guess so. So that was a nice talk. Thank you, Danny, for this interesting presentation. So yes, we received a couple of questions. So Pedro was interested by the drive time and was wondering if CartoVista was able to do drive time isochrones. So I think you showed that during the presentation, and really had a question about the traffic data being available for Brazil.
Yes. Yes, actually, the Here API is actually available for Brazil, and they have actually a lot of great data. We have one of our partner in Brazil, Carlos from Geograph, which can't speak right now, but they have a lot of experience on the Brazilian market. So this is something that will work properly in Brazil, and the ability to turn on or off those different layers and call out those APIs is certainly something that we've looked at. And we've selected Here Maps because of their coverage. You know, they have great coverage in Europe as well in Latin America. I know there's a few participants from Mexico and Peru. If you guys are looking at implementing and doing isochrones, they will be really well supported in pretty much all the countries that we've tested.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing as well with Here is that it's very easy to scale and pay per transaction. So that's a nice way to be able to implement that in the applications.
Yeah, and one of the greatest thing about their API as well is the speed, the response speed. You've seen it in some of the demos we have. It literally takes not even a second to get back the results. And the way we display it in the CartoVista engine, makes that even more interactive.
Good. So another question from Jilan, who may be a bit disappointed because the person was expecting some interactive maps with traffic flows from multiple origins to multiple destinations. So
yes,
that wasn't part of this presentation.
Yes. Yes,
but,
yeah, maybe I can talk about that. This is something that is available, but not out of the box. This is something that is available with our software development kit. We have implemented this for a few customers. Maybe you are aware of the work we did for the Census Transportation Planning product, CTPP. So this is something that is available, and maybe we'd love to show you a lot of the things we've done for CTPP. We have quite a few examples of how we could use those flows between traffic flows and looking at multiple origin and destinations on the same map.
Good. So Fatima is interested to know how many points can we draw isochrones at the same time, so simultaneously. Yeah,
there's no limit to the isochrones. Obviously, you can create as many as you'd like, because you can click on multiple locations and they're just going to be added to your map, and they can be saved as part of your session. So there's no limit.
Okay, perfect. And on the same type of question, how many isochrones can you compare on your map?
You can actually create up to 9 different isochrones from a single point. So whenever I click on the map at the centroid of the map, you can design up to 9 different areas or drive time zones. So 9, you can specify 9 intervals of time, essentially. The limit is 9, which is most of the time sufficient.
Perfect. Oh, you talked about CTPP. So Jillian was wondering the status of the contract with CTPP now.
Yeah, we are actually actively working with that customer. We are migrating CTPP application to version 6, which was just released. So stay tuned. This is going to be available most likely end of June. So coming together.
Yeah, working hard on that as well.
Yes.
Brooks is wondering how many sessions can you create for a map?
Yeah, there's no limitations to the number of sessions. You can design as many as you'd like or save as many as you'd like. And the beauty of the sessions as well is, let's say I have 100 sessions. Maybe some of those are shareable, maybe some of those are not. With the permissions, you can really make this a lower number, because you can say, I want to give Cecile access to my session. I only want to give her access to my session. I don't want to share it with anybody else. So that puts in a lot of flexibility for the management.
Okay, perfect. Another question from Judy. How many data tables can you link to a server layer?
Yeah. You can actually link as many tables as you'd like. There's no theoretical limit on how many tables you can link to a layer. You can go crazy and put as many as you'd like. Obviously, it depends on the data volume, but for most users, whatever the number is, as long as you have the storage available on the server to host the data, you're good to go.
Okay. Mike has an interesting question as well. He'd like to know what is the release date of CartoVista 6.
I'm going to let you answer that one. Why not?
Why not? Mike, it will be a pleasure to deliver this very shortly. Today is the official release date, but we'll have to keep going on our download links and all of that. So we'll be in touch probably early next week to talk with you about that and send you the information. Nadia has a question. She'd like to know if we can export the isochrone layer as a tab file.
Right now, no. This is something that we will support in the future, though. This is on the list, maybe for 6.1 or 6.01. We still don't know, depending on what we put into the next release. But it has already been identified as a feature that could be useful for many of you. Good question.
Also, can you tell us, Danny, how many users the system can support? This is a question from Howard.
Yeah, you can have unlimited users, really. It's named users. They need to have an account, or you make the data public or the maps that you're creating public. But in the case where you are using the user management, you can create as many users. The only thing is your license needs to be it needs to support the number of users, and the number of users is actually encoded in the license of the publisher that you have.
Okay, Pedro's got another question. On the thematic map for points, how many different images can we upload?
There's no limitation to the number of images you can upload. You can design as many as you'd like. Let's say you have 200 different logos, that will work properly. In particular, if you're trying to display a point layer with different logos, it makes sense to use images. And in this case, we support it quite well.
Good. Okay, so Kalu has a question from Brazil, and he'd like to know if it's possible to input text in CartoVista. So, for example, click in a point and fill a form.
It's actually possible to add an annotation. So I can annotate the map and add text on the map, and those will be saved. Now, if you're talking about doing a data entry or adding a new point that you will put down the load save, not yet supported, but this is something that is on the list of new features that we're planning for the upcoming releases. We still can't give a date on that, as we're still working on the roadmap. But there's been a lot of requests and a lot of interest for user editing of data online and those things, and that would be a perfect scenario for enabling that.
Okay, if we go back to the isochrone polygons, so Juan is wondering if the number of isochrone areas you can create could be limited in any way, for example, by cost.
Yes. The way it's going to work is you'll have a series of transactions. A transaction is an isochrone call. Imagine that each of those isochrone have a time and those represent a call. So your license will give you access to a certain number of transactions, and we're still working out the details with our Here Maps provider on that.
Okay, Estelle, I would like to know if it's possible to give permission to tenant users to upload their own data, an Excel file, for instance.
Yes. So let's say I create, let's take a scenario. Let's say I create a new user potential, let's say a new tenant called Walmart. The Walmart users themselves can have the ability to upload the data. And then you can give them the ability to link the data, and that's all related to the roles that we have in the system. You could be a map creator, you could be an administrator. There are different roles that we've set up. So we really wanted to open it up so that the business people can start interacting and updating data if they need. They have the right to do it.
Good. I think
very good question, by the way.
Yeah, so we've got some how do I say that? Sorry, it's a bit late for me. Some people interested in visiting us in Canada, so I'm sure everybody is welcome if they want to join us for in person. So Kalu, whenever you want to come, it will be a pleasure.
Yes.
I'm not sure I pronounce your name properly. I hope it's not too bad. So yeah, I think in terms of question,
if you want to come right now, we're just about crack open a nice bottle of champagne to celebrate it. So it's just maybe the distance make it hard, but we'll save that for the next time.
So I think it's about it with the questions. Anybody still has questions? Nope.
So maybe we can finish this off with the poll that we have, which is the final poll. I think this could be very useful. We'd appreciate it if you can take a few minutes to take the time to answer those questions. I'm going to launch it right now. It's a bunch of questions as to, we'd like to know how large some of your GIS data sets are, if you're using GIS or not. And I think some feedback on some of the features that we've presented, if they are relevant to you or not. And this is, again, a multiple choice. You can go in and let's say you really like the new user interface, you can select that. If you didn't like the mobile support, I couldn't see why, then you can fill that. So we'll leave the participant a few minutes to actually start answering those questions. And I think this will give us some great feedback.
Yeah, and to answer to Mike's question, yes, the webcast will be available to watch again for sure. It will be a pleasure to share that with you.
Yes, we're likely going to place this on the video section of our website. There will be a link there to download it, and you'll be able to watch it again if you'd like to see some things in more details.
And I want to say hello to Kalu in Bradesco, in Brazil. I'm glad to see that you're so enthusiastic about CartoVista. Keep going. We'll be here to help you, and I'm sure everybody at Geograph will be is available to help you on that.
Yes.
So hello to Geograph as well and all the others.
Yes. I have to take the opportunity to keep improving my Portuguese. It's a little rusty, to say the least.
Better than mine, though.
Yeah. So we've got great participation. We've got 78% of people that have voted. Interesting. A lot of folks have a very large data set, 100,000 records or more. Just about 50%. It looks like of the participants that have responded so far have very large data sets. So I think we've with this release of version 6, it's good that we've shown that we can support this. All right, we almost have 94% of all people that actually voted. So there's still a person that didn't vote, but let's say we won't bother her too much or him too much. So I'll end the polling right now, and I'm going to share the results with you. So there we go. I have the results. So how large are your GIS data sets? As I mentioned, 56% of respondents have very large data sets. It's not a surprise to us, but a few of you as well are working with smaller data. If we take a look at, that goes in line with the features that are relevant to you. The large data set support is huge. 88% of you found that extremely useful. Same with Excel data. Aren't we glad we did this? This is making our life easier. Data linking, update capability. You could see right now from the survey that, I think most of the features that we've added, are providing a lot of value. And, we find that this is exciting times for us, because I think there's a foundation that we've set up that we'll be able to improve upon in the next little while. Our intention is to keep enhancing the CartoVista product and have an aggressive roadmap to keep adding more and more features. And the feedback we get from our customers is so key. So quite excited. And are you interested in testing the CartoVista server? Not a lot of people are not interested, which is also a good sign. Either they're already using it, or they are interested in evaluating it and taking it a step further. So for me, this is great news. That being said, we're not too late. We're actually right on time for once. Good planning, Cecile, on your side. Keep me on my toes.
Yes.
Beautiful. So thank you again to everybody. Thanks for attending this great session. By the way, this was the first time we did a webinar, so we have learned a lot in the last little while. So this can only improve with time, but it's great to get your participation and get to see that people are interested in what we do.
Yes. So again, thanks everybody, and
thanks.
Let's hope we'll share another webinar soon with you.
All right. Thank you.